The Protestant Reformation is one of the most significant developments of the 16th century. It was not merely a theological dispute, it was a social, political, and intellectual movement that reshaped European history and influenced events for centuries afterward. To understand this transformative period, we need to examine the three major branches of the Reformation that emerged in Europe: Lutheranism, Calvinism, and Anglicanism. Lutheranism developed from the teachings of Martin Luther and became the Lutheran Church. Calvinism followed the teachings of the French lawyer and theologian John Calvin. Its influence remains visible today in the Presbyterian Church as well as in the Reformed and Congregationalist churches of New York and New England. The third major branch, Anglicanism, arose from the English Reformation initiated under Henry VIII. In England, it is known as the Anglican Church or the Church of England. In the United States, its counterpart is the Episcopal Church. From this tradition, additional Protestant denominations eventually developed, including Methodists, Baptists, and the Religious Society of Friends, Quakers. There are other Christian churches that are non-Catholic, yet not considered Protestant in the traditional sense. For example, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, Mormons, and Christian Science. These groups do not trace their origins to any of the three founders of Protestantism and, in the case of the Latter-day Saints, arose in the United States long after the Reformation. To understand why the Protestant Reformation took hold so powerfully, we must examine the condition of the Roman Catholic Church on the eve of the movement. Over the next discussions, you will encounter a number of theological concepts because the most enduring legacy of the Reformation is its contribution to religious thought, the ongoing debate about how humans can know and understand God. The central theological question facing Christian thinkers in the late Middle Ages was whether human reason could tell us anything meaningful about God. This debate intensified in the 13th century when European scholars rediscovered the works of the ancient Greek philosopher Aristotle. Medieval Europeans had previously known only fragments of his writings, but around the 1200s, more texts became available. Aristotle offered rational explanations for natural and human phenomena, all without reference to Jesus or the Christian God. Here was a thinker whose logical system seemed more comprehensive than anything Christian scholars had previously produced, and yet he knew nothing of Christianity. This forced theologians to confront a major problem. Could reason and Christian faith be reconciled? Could one arrive at truth about the universe through reason alone? And would this truth align with the teachings of Scripture and the Church? One of the most influential figures to answer this question was St. Thomas Aquinas, a Dominican theologian of the 13th century, and to this day, the patron saint of students. Aquinas devoted his life to studying theology and classical philosophy, especially Aristotle. His major work, the Summa Theologica, or Summary of Theology, argued that faith and reason not only could agree, but must agree. God created human reason and also revealed truth through faith. Therefore, the two sources of understanding could not ultimately contradict each other. Through extensive rational argument, Aquinas demonstrated how the teachings of the Church and the logical philosophy of Aristotle complemented one another. In his time, Aquinas' synthesis was considered the definitive reconciliation of faith and reason. However, Aquinas' views did not go unchallenged. A group of theologians known as the nominalists offered a powerful critique. Their name derives from the Latin word nomina, meaning names. They argued that when humans attempt to explain God using rational discourse, they rely on human language, mere names, that cannot fully express divine reality. Using reason to define God, they argued, places human limitations on something infinite. Words that work for scientific or philosophical explanations, such as describing how gravity functions, are inadequate for describing God. For the nominalists, the essence of God is not reason, but divine will, something far beyond human comprehension. Therefore, they concluded that people cannot truly understand God through rational argument. Instead, believers must rely on faith, Scripture, and the authority of the Church, trusting that they are obeying God's will even if they cannot intellectually grasp it. These theological debates between reason and faith, between Aquinas and the nominalists, formed the intellectual backdrop of the early 16th century. It was into this atmosphere of uncertainty, critique, and growing desire for reform that the Protestant Reformation was born.